Using design thinking is how we get technology adopted in construction. Getting the end user involved in the solution, the design of the tool, how it fits into their daily field day, that ensures that it solves their problem, makes their lives easier. You do that, you'll get technology adopted in construction.
Welcome to the Construction Disruption Podcast, where we uncover the future of building and remodeling. I'm Todd Miller of Isaiah Industries, a manufacturer of specialty metal roofing and other building materials. And today my co-host is Ethan Young. Ethan, how are you doing?
I'm doing pretty good, Todd. I'm doing pretty good. Just got back from vacation and enjoying being back.
Well, okay, rub it in and tell us where you were.
I went to Italy for a week, so it was my first time going over to Europe, so it was a lot of fun. We went to Rome, Venice, and Florence, so
awesome.
Saw a lot. But
I do want to hear more and see some photos someday. You said you took a bunch. But,
I did.
I have been in Italy one time and on business, and it was kind of a whirlwind trip, but it definitely told me enough that I need to go back.
Yeah, it's worth taking the time for sure.
Well, fantastic. Well, I also want to let our audience know we are doing a first-time event here on Construction Disruption with this episode. Ethan and I have given each other challenge words. So each of us has a word given to us by the other one to try to work in at some time during our conversation with our guest today. And then at the end, we will reveal our success or lack thereof, possibly in my case. I don't know. But I wanted to let our audience know because now they can be listening and seeing, okay, if they hear a really odd word, which tend to come out of my mouth a lot anyway, they can say, that's the challenge word, maybe. We'll see. So our goal here at Construction Disruption is to provide timely and forward-looking information regarding the construction world. As part of that, we're always looking at innovations and trends and practices, building materials, the labor market, all kinds of things. Basically, our goal is to learn about new and emerging things that are going to shape the future of building and remodeling and construction, and then we go out and find an expert in that area who we can bring on the show and spotlight what they are doing. So in today's episode of Construction Disruption, I think we're going to be about as cutting edge as you can be, discussing custom software that many contracting companies are choosing to have built for them in order to improve their operations and also, I think, to solve specific business problems. So with us today on this topic is Bob Armbrister, President and CEO of Spark Business Works, based in Kalamazoo, Michigan. Bob, welcome to Construction Disruption. It's really a pleasure to have you here today.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Todd. And Ethan, I want to hear about your trip as well. Yeah, thanks for having me.
Well, you have a really long history in software development and IT. And would you share with us a bit about your career and how you came to be at Spark?
Yeah, quite a bit of history in IT, and then moved into software. And I'd always been passionate about how technology can actually impact a business and get real world results. And so I've had several startups and software firms that I've owned and operated. And the common thread was that people kept coming to me saying, will you help me build something for my business? And construction was huge. One of my big clients was a national construction management firm, and I'd been consulting with them. And we just saw the huge need for digital innovation in construction, and the industry just getting kind of a bad rap, like it's not a innovative industry, when once you get into it, you realize it is. And so we've been focusing a lot of our business on construction and a lot of trades, because there's so many options in construction when it comes to point solutions. And especially in the last few years, all the investment that goes into these new startups that are all offering different solutions, it's pretty risky for a lot of construction firms to try to pick the winners and losers of those to kind of hitch their technology roadmap together. And so we've seen a lot of success in just helping firms in this industry navigate that, decide when to build something themselves, custom, versus using something off the shelf. And so it's just a great environment, and we've been lucky to spend quite a bit of our time in construction. But yeah, we build workflow tools and technology for a bunch of different industries, and just kind of been my bread and butter.
Well, I think that is quite interesting that you folks work a lot with with the construction industry, and I think you're spot on. There's a general perception out there that our industry is kind of stodgy and slow to change, not necessarily really early adapters. But you certainly have hit the nail on the head in terms of there are companies out there in the construction industry who have been early adopters and really are working to push things ahead. Some companies, though, there are a lot still in our industry who are pretty old school and really aren't pushing things ahead. What do you think their fears are? Why are they sometimes afraid to go into new things or explore technology?
Every firm has had the pain of a technology failure.
Good point.
And when you experience that pain, you don't want to feel that again, right? Hey, this was the solution. This was the silver bullet that was going to solve all our problems. We went to roll it out. Field team rejected it. Office team got mad. I mean, just a ton of pain, right? They don't want to make that mistake again. And especially right now, there's 30, I think I saw the other day, there's 3,500 technology startups in construction right now. Firms are either finding their roadmap, building the solutions they need and innovating, or they're sitting on the sideline and waiting. So the firms that are sitting on the sideline and waiting, they've got good reason to. They don't want to experience that pain. They're going to wait and see who the winners and losers are, and then, adopt the right technology. The firms that are finding ways to navigate through it are starting to get further and further ahead of those firms that are waiting. And I'm seeing that very clearly in our experience.
So is that your general advice also to kind of, take it, maybe not necessarily slow, be very proactive and forward reaching, but kind of a one step at a time approach for companies?
Yeah, I call it practical innovation. There's times where we've built solutions for clients that is a time entry tool. Like, that's not very innovative,
Mm-hmm.
right? These firms, like I drove by a large dormitory for a college. I saw the entire thing get built over a course of 18 months. It was a modular design. The footprint of the job site was tiny, right? So these trades just built this giant building, assembled it on site. I mean, super technical. And then we end up building time entry tools for these types of firms, right? It's like, doesn't seem very innovative. But when that tool allows them to have data in real time on time, material, equipment usage, and they use that in their ability to deliver better to the marketplace, and that tool has an ROI of 6 or 12 months, practical innovation for construction, in my opinion. Maybe it's not the whiz bang drones automation, but it's practical. It paid for itself. It got adopted, and then they move on to the next biggest ROI initiative. And so that kind of practical approach of, we know the landscape is going to change. We know there's going to be all this new stuff. But what's our biggest bang for the buck right now? That'll put us in a better position when we readdress things in 6 months. So kind of taking that practical approach of, how does it impact us? And then pop your head back up, look at the landscape, what's changed, and let's look for the next one. We see that being kind of the pathway that works the best in construction.
I really like that too. I think a lot of people in construction are very practical people. And like you were talking earlier with the kind of people sitting on the sidelines, they don't want to take a lot of risk. If you do a smaller risk like that, that's a great way to get them started without, sacrificing huge chunks of time and effort and then losing all of it. And so, yeah, I agree. I think that seems like a great way to do it.
So a company might, as they explore technology, they might kind of go from vanilla to chocolate and then chocolate with sprinkles.
Yeah.
Not straight from vanilla to pistachio or something necessarily.
You gotta take your time a little bit.
Okay. Well, I'm kind of curious, as you help your clients kind of figure out what that roadmap is and, maybe what some of the low-hanging fruit is, are there any tools or how do you work through that with them? I remember once I worked with a consultant and he said, Todd, make a list of all your frustrations. And he honestly thought I'd give him a fresh list of like 5 or 6 things, and I literally had about 20 pages. I'm a very frustrated man. But how do you work through that process with folks?
It's a great process. So what we try to start every client with is understanding kind of their where and their why, right? Where are you trying to go? And why are you trying to go there? There's too many times where I talk to firms that are replacing an accounting system or they're replacing their project management tool, and they don't know why and how it impacts their ability to get where they're going from a visionary standpoint. So kind of going back to, hey, where are you going with this firm? Is this firm going to double in size in 5 years, or are you going to get smaller, or what is that? You cannot make a good decision around technology until you know that. Mm-hmm. So you get that where and why, and then helps you understand what to pick. We then ask firms to look at their competitive advantage, right? Why do customers choose you as a business? Sometimes it's, hey, we have the best relationships. Our clients have known us for 50 years and we have deep relationships. Or maybe it's low cost. We're the low cost provider. Understanding that, why clients buy, along with the vision, we then can help clients decide what to invest in on that roadmap in construction technology, right? If you're all relationship based, you're going to want to invest in the technology tools that enable that to continue. So there's times where if you're a low cost provider, you're going to want to make sure that you're investing in technology that enables you to keep your costs low. It seems obvious, right? But there's too many times where you're spending time on technology that doesn't need to happen. An example like that time entry tool, that client has the oldest accounting system known to mankind. Like any technology person looking at that company, replace that accounting system. But that doesn't help their field team. It does fine. What they needed was the ability to get data in real time from their field. So those kind of examples, when you put a roadmap together that includes why clients are choosing you and where you're trying to go, and filter out that noise of potential projects. We then ask clients to pick guardrails on this roadmap, one or two things that will enable them to stay on the right path. I call them innovation guardrails. Examples are, we have got a client where their two guardrails are, any technology has to help the field team, and it has to have a 12-month ROI. They know where they're going. They know why clients pick them. Then they have these guardrails. So when someone wants to bring up a project, they won't bring it up unless it's going to impact the field team. So now it takes those 3,500 startups, like all those options, it now narrows it right down. And then sharing that where and that why with the team, they understand why you're doing projects. They understand how it impacts the business. They're easier to adopt. They get it. It's not just leadership asking them to adopt a new tool. They're brought into the solution. So I know I'm giving a lot of information, but we do this all the time. I love it. You can probably tell that. But you put those things together and you're starting to implement a technology roadmap that actually helps construction firms win more work the way they're winning it right now. It's awesome.
That's really neat because, we're a manufacturing company, not necessarily a hands-on banging nails construction firm. But I'm already seeing in what you're saying some of the basis of the reason for some of the, frankly, technology failures that we've had over the years. We were branching off into the next bright, shiny thing rather than really making sure that it was right. And that concept of innovation guardrails, as I think about that and some of the things that we have done, I can clearly see how that would have altered our decision if we would have had those guardrails in place.
Yeah, I mean, the guardrails are awesome. Like that example I used of that client, they had just transformed the way their business operated. And having that 12-month ROI, they were able to use kind of the boom of the market to fund all of their technology innovation, and it all paid for itself. And that's what's cool about construction. A lot of smaller privately held firms, you're dealing with the owners. These people do not waste money on stuff, right? So when they're able to get $1 back in 12 months, it's really cool. And at the same time, just transforming their organization. It doesn't get any better than that.
Are there any specific success stories of your clients that come to mind that you could give us a teaser of?
Yeah, I mean, I think that firm that I was referencing, a large mechanical contractor, went from, because they implemented a tool to get daily data from their field, they went from a company that used to look backwards to look at how last month went with a project or the financials to now knowing daily. And they were able to use that data in their bidding process because they got a lot smarter. And so they recently won a really big regional projects. And one of their competitors, I saw that same week that the announcement came out, and their competition told me that client underbid everybody to a point where they weren't going to make any money. Then I went and talked to my client that actually won. I said, hey, I heard you guys won. And they said, hey, we're going to make a killing on this project. The reason of the differentiation between the firm that lost and the firm that won, it was a huge project. So the client that, or the firm that lost put all the risk in that bid because of all the unknowns. The client that won had eliminated that risk over the last year by getting daily data from their field, getting more efficient. So they were way more confident in their price. And that differentiation is showing up on big projects. Over time, it's going to come down. And the firms that are waiting, they're going to start losing smaller and smaller projects this way. And that's just kind of a story that really resonated with me to see the difference between those two firms.
That is fascinating. And I can certainly see how that ability to get real-time information from your current projects, which, I don't know this company, but I'm guessing some of these projects could be 12, 18, 24 months long, and get that information in real time rather than 6 months after it was done and you've had a chance to analyze everything and really do a deep dive into it. So then that impacts everything that you're bidding in that interim.
Oh, yeah.
That's fantastic.
I did want to ask about your design process. I saw a blog post you wrote about design thinking, and that was something that I covered in college, so it kind of pinged right in there. I have a book actually right here about the guys that kind of created design thinking, Tom Kelly and David Kelly, the brothers that kind of created it. And I find it a really fascinating idea, and I read your article, and I thought it was great. Could you go into a little detail about how that applies to your design process for custom software?
So there's also a post out there about thinking like a software company, which is really what I'm talking about, practical innovation, building a culture of change. So the biggest risk in construction technology, like I'm sure people listening hear about that company that went to daily field entry and they're rolling their eyes going, yeah, right, you're never going to get that adopted. Using design thinking is how we get technology adopted in construction. Getting the end user involved in the solution, the design of the tool, how it fits into their daily day, their daily field day, or whoever's using it. That ensures that it solves their problem, makes their lives easier. You do that, you'll get technology adopted in construction. I mean, the reason people don't adopt technology in the field or in certain areas of construction is because it doesn't help them, or it's confusing, or it's hard to use. I mean, you just list it off. So using design thinking in the beginning of implementing any of these tools is the key to getting it adopted. That addresses the biggest risk. And it's fun. Like we always bring in the most difficult users in a company, because typically when you're making decisions in technology and construction, like you don't bring in, Ed, the guy that hates everything and he's going to shoot holes in all of your, he walks by a television, it gets blurry, right? Nothing works for that guy. We bring him into the room. Tell us all the reasons why this new field entry tool isn't going to work. And we listen. And then he helps us design the solution. Now, when you roll that out, he's out there being a champion. That's how you get adoption.
That's the thing I was really picking up too from the article is just you get in right with the people and, like you said, to become a champion of it, then it's not just something coming down from the top that they have to deal with and, they're in no way they got to do a new system. And I guess that's kind of the whole point of design thinking for anybody listening that's never heard the term before is just very user-focused, very human-focused. Like, how can you make this product perfect for that user and not just your idea or what, kind of tailoring it. So it's a really interesting concept to me. And they talk about it in the book with a great example of a guy that designed medical machines like MRIs. It's like he has this award-winning design. It's great. And he goes to see it in use. And there's a little girl in there and she's just scared to death to go in the machine. And he's blown away. He's like, well, my machine, he thinks my machine was great. Why is it? But the end user, it scares them. And, it's just not the right fit. So he ends up going back to the drawing board and making like a way kid-friendly machine with like all these stickers and designs. And, it's just a resounding success once he goes back to that end user and really tailors it for him. So
perfect example of my first mobile app we built for construction. My first construction client, this is probably 7 years ago. I built this mobile app. And at this point, I think I was developing it. And I showed the HR person down the hall, hey, what do you think of this? And they loved it. I showed the marketing person. I showed all these people, right, that were around me in the office. And then I take it to the field, and this guy comes out, and he's got like the biggest fingers and the biggest hands. And he's trying to click these buttons on his phone, and he's just like, this is ridiculous. And I just realized, like, one, my hands are tiny. I'm like computer guy hands versus like real work hands. But then it's like, wow, like these buttons need to be way bigger. And then, yeah, how's this going to work if, you had gloves on, or how's this going to work, and the font size. And it's just like, oh man, that was when I realized, design thinking in construction, duh. But too many times these technology solutions are getting built in an office without pulling the real users in. So using design thinking is really kind of our suggestion to mitigating that risk of lack of adoption.
Boy, I can sure see how what you're doing is going to play well for your clients and really provide them with good solutions that have ROI and, allow them to continue to go forward with additional tech and projects. Probably one of the scary things for a lot of people as they're listening to this is, oh my goodness, custom software, that sounds really expensive and like it's going to take forever. And, of course, any of us who have done packaged software or cloud software know that the dollars add up quickly and you got to hire an integrator and it takes months to do all that type of stuff. So tell us a little bit about the comparison between custom software versus trying to do something off the shelf.
Yeah, there's a lot of great solutions out there, and we've probably never really rebuilt anything that's been out there that's working great. We'll help clients integrate that. So there is a place for custom, and there is a bigger place for off the shelf, right?
Okay.
When a client does decide that, hey, it's probably too risky, or a software doesn't do exactly what we need the way we need it, then we go the custom route. And in those cases, the biggest differentiator or the biggest difference between off the shelf and custom is off the shelf, you're buying 100% of a product and you're going to use 20% of it. When you're building custom, you're going to only build that 20% that you need.
Mm-hmm.
And so a lot of times the custom side is a lot lighter, not so many options, not so complicated, not all these features that you don't use. So when you really compare the cost, a lot of times it's not that different than being committed to a very large licensed recurring solution off the shelf. And we've seen a lot of clients too find ways to reduce the price by getting grants, R&D grants, different ways to kind of, a lot of our sophisticated CFOs are finding ways to kind of depreciate these assets, because this custom software is actually an asset. It can go on your balance sheet. You can depreciate it over time. Just like a piece of equipment. So they're finding ways to make it kind of being apples to apples when it comes to actual expense, but getting what they need. Now, with all of the investment in construction tech, we see clients actually choosing custom because it's the less risky option. There's a lot of startups that appear to be amazing, huge software companies, when really they're three guys, but they have a software solution for a certain subset of the market, and it's amazing. There's going to be a time here, we've seen it in other industries, where you've got all this investment, there's all these startups, and then several years go by and then there's a huge consolidation movement where you're either going out of business or you're getting purchased and rolled into something else. More sophisticated firms acknowledge that's happening, and they're kind of choosing custom as a risk mitigator to signing up with the wrong company that might not make it. So they're saying, hey, we're gonna leverage point solutions for the stuff that just makes sense. But when it comes to maybe a core that revolves around our differentiator in the marketplace, we're going to build that. We're going to let that connect to all these other cool tools. That seems to be kind of the strategy that a lot of firms are choosing, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, I really like that. I mean, you get the flexibility of custom and the stability of, the relative stability of already out there solutions. So it seems like a really good way to do it.
Just as I'm listening, I'm thinking back to, and this probably is back to about 1990, so long time ago. We needed a CRM system. Well, off-the-shelf CRM systems didn't really exist for the most part back then. I mean, I think there was a program called ACT that was just getting started about that time.
Oh, yeah.
So I had a custom design system made, and we read it on a Quantel business computer, and it did exactly what we needed. And, of course, today we're several systems down the road where we've used various off-the-shelf systems. And I still go back and think to that system I used in 1990, and I think it did exactly what I needed, and that's all it did. It was perfect. And yet, we can't recapture that all with off-the-shelf systems today. So good stuff. So, I mean, you've talked about things like increased productivity, job reporting, different things. Are there any real key areas where you believe that technology and software development is going to bring some real benefit and advantages to the construction industry going forward? I guess what I'm trying to say is, what are some of the key areas that you're seeing companies really delve into more tech?
Yeah, it really depends on their unique roadmap, where they're going and why.
Mm-hmm.
And going back to those guardrails, most of the time it involves some type of field data collection to start, trying to increase the velocity of data in the organization. Rarely do we see firms not being able to get past or getting down a really solid roadmap without that. So typically it's some type of field data collection if you're in the field and doing that kind of work.
Okay.
From there, typically the next biggest ROI is time savings around scheduling and utilization of assets and material. I'm just kind of going through like the biggest ROI things. So typically it's your time, decision making,
Mm-hmm.
which is like the field data collection, and then it's typically scheduling. We also see a lot of clients focusing on cash flow. How can we bill clients sooner? And when you have the data from a daily basis, you can start to bill clients faster than a month late, right? So we have some clients that say, hey, we're going to double in size and we want to get our quick ratio or our balance sheet in a way better spot. We want to start invoicing weekly, or we want to start invoicing daily for certain things. So it really depends on the client. But when you kind of think of it in business terms and you have some of those guardrails, the options really kind of rise to the top. Clients aren't, struggling to find the next thing. It's pretty apparent to them.
Yeah.
And then at the end of the day, it's what we see is these companies that are building cultures of innovation, right? When they start to implement changes every 30 days or every 90 days, they're rolling out things and they're making improvements and they're taking input from the users. They start to build cultures of innovation and change so that it doesn't become such a huge lift every time you do it, versus the firms that like every 5 years they have to do some massive thing, some massive cutover,
Right.
and they damage the culture a little bit versus building cultures of change. And that's what I kind of see as like the underlying benefit that you can't put a price tag on, but the firms that are doing it, they're becoming more attractive when it comes to recruitment. They're retaining more employees. So there's a huge advantage there that no one's talking about yet.
Yeah, that's interesting. And, not to mention simply building value into their business also,
Right.
And really being a more attractive target when that owner chooses to move on to something else. But you're right. So much of that is about anything you can do to attract and retain team members is so critical too.
I think it ties really nicely into the design thinking too. One of the concepts that I was kind of looking at before this podcast was creative confidence, which is once you start going with this, you can really just kind of, like you're saying, those businesses, they get a little sense of it and then they can make that a cultural thing. And that's just huge for them versus the ones that aren't super confident about it. Every 5 years they do it and then, they just never get on a roll. But if you get that confidence, I mean,
Definitely.
it's a game changer. So
yeah, it's cool to see.
The last few years have been really interesting for everyone in our world, and I think construction industry in particular. And, we had COVID, and then we had a time period where we were all dead for a few months, and then we had a time period where we were all crazy busy, and a few months after that, we were all experiencing supply chain problems and price increases, and now we're seeing, of course, higher interest rates and sort of a bear market in the stock market and inflation. Things that are going to continue to impact our industry. Because of your work with construction companies, Bob, do you have any advice for construction companies right now as we kind of chart into these next few years and see what they bring?
I think the key is that remember why your clients choose you, and then make your investment and your decisions off of that. Maintain that. Typically what we see is clients have to pull back on spend. Don't pull back on the things that enable that to happen. I mean, now I'm taking my technology hat off and put my business hat on.
Mm-hmm.
What we've seen is firms that aren't aware of that end up cutting in the wrong spots. Velocity of data is easier than you think, which is really just getting ahead of things. Like if you're tracking stuff monthly, try to figure out how do you track it weekly. That makes a huge difference too. And that usually doesn't involve too much more technology, right? If you're getting that data monthly, what can you and your team do to increase the velocity so that you can get that data sooner? That usually doesn't involve much cost at all or an outside firm. You're already doing it. And then just kind of working it back that way, just to put yourself in a better spot, because too many times we're making decisions too late. So when the times change like that, do that. And I think having some plan and then being transparent, I mean, that's one thing that technology, we see the difference in, we're in boardrooms and we're in job site trailers, seeing the difference of perception when it comes to technology and initiatives. What people don't know, they're going to make up, or what they're not told, right? So being transparent and here's what we're doing, here's why, it helps you get that buy-in, especially in the times like this when, the market's doing all crazy stuff. Having alignment with your team, I think, is huge. I guess that goes for any industry, right?
No, that's good. And, something I know I stress around here is don't just tell people the how or the what, tell them the why, why we're having to do this or why we're in this situation and why we're making these decisions. And I love what you said there, Bob. I mean, it was so simple. Just thinking about, why do your clients choose you? And don't
mess
monkey with
those up.
those things.
Keep those going.
Right. Yeah. No, that's fantastic. I think a lot of our audience members here on Construction Disruption are younger folks who are getting started with careers in design and in construction. Any advice for folks entering maybe the industry or maybe even IT folks who want to figure out how to bring more value to our industry? And I love your story that you were the IT guy that saw an industry that I can bring value to. So any advice to folks?
I think the biggest advice to younger folks is to, especially in technology, in coming into any industry, is understand the business side. I've seen too many times where the technology group suggests a great project. Like I use that example of that accounting system. Like, oh man, this new one could do all these things. But especially in construction, like no one's going to invest in anything that doesn't have an ROI. So understand the business model, because you can come into a construction firm right now and probably find 100 things that don't make sense, right? Why are they using paper for that? Why are they using Excel for this? But if the solution, doesn't pay for itself, it's not going to get adopted. And I think, I've seen a lot of young people eventually see that, and then they're just off to the races. I see other ones get real frustrated and they think that, the leadership are a bunch of idiots, right? Try not to be too negative here, but you guys know, I'm sure, Ethan, you've come up with ideas and thinking, what are these guys doing here? Why are they doing it this way, right? Well, there's something happened at some point in time that made it easier for them to use paper than whatever system they were using prior. So I think just having that empathy of understanding that people made the best decision they could at some point in time, understanding that, and then, taking a fresh approach. And then, respect your elders, get their input. We've got some firms. It seems like every construction firm has that person that's been there for 30 years. That person's input is so valuable, right? So just because they have gray hair, don't dismiss their input. Get their input. They're going to tell you all the ways that things have failed in the past. Take that into consideration. I guess these are things I'd be telling my sons right now if they were out here.
That's great life advice, too. And I know one of the things, I think a lot of people, and I'm way off of construction and IT now, but I think a lot of people go through points where you look back on your childhood and your parents and you think, gosh, why did they do that? Or them doing that impacted me that way. And I know for me, the light switch really clicked when I realized exactly what you said, Bob. My parents did the best they knew how to do given what they had at the time. And their intentions were always good. And that really changes a lot of that pain and different things, baggage you may be carrying from your child when you start to realize that, okay, my parents did the best they knew how to do. And even if they didn't, if you develop that mindset, it at least changes you.
There you go, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, this has been cool. We are close to the end of our time, and I thank you so much. Before we close out, though, I do want to ask you if you're willing to participate in our rapid-fire questions.
Let's do it.
These are 7 questions, maybe a little serious, maybe silly. All you got to do is give a short answer. So you're up to it?
I'm up to it, right?
Our audience needs to understand Bob has no idea what we're going to ask.
Yeah,
And
even if I screw up, you got to just cut this out, okay?
Yeah, we'll just...
yeah, we can edit.
Yeah,
maybe.
Right.
One thing I will clue the audience in on, I have already been able to work in my challenge word.
I have not yet.
Ooh, there you go.
I have to get creative here, but
Ethan has not. So now, as we alternate questions, he can just completely change a question.
I can, and that's what I have been thinking about. So we'll see.
Okay, well, we will do our questions. You want to do the first one?
Yeah, I can do the first one.
Great.
So if you're in the Olympics, what sport would you participate in?
Golf.
Nice.
That's an Olympic sport now, I think.
I think
It might be, one of the newer ones that they introduced.
If it's not, it should be.
There you go. Okay, question number 2. How long does it take you to get ready for your day each morning?
15 minutes.
Oh, man. You got me beat by 5. I swear as you get older, it takes longer because there's just more stuff you got to look at and say, oh, I got to fix that.
All right. What language would you like to learn?
Spanish.
Yeah. It's a very practical one.
My boys speak Spanish, and I can't. So they have like this secret language. I don't know what they're saying. So
that's dangerous. Question 4. This is interesting. What is the earliest major news story that you recall from your childhood?
Probably the Challenger crash.
Oh, interesting. That was, 84, 85? 85,
Yeah,
maybe.
I remember seeing that.
Yeah.
I remember on one of those old TVs sat on the ground, like it was like a piece of furniture.
Yeah.
I'm not that young. I still had that experience.
I think I still have one of those TVs stuck someplace in a room. That's interesting. Yeah, because mine is probably the Vietnam War. That just seemed to permeate the news when I was a child.
Right.
All right. What's the weirdest food you've ever eaten?
Weirdest food?
Yeah.
Probably like something like crickets or
Oh, okay.
one of those like things one of those gag gifts and you just eat it because just to show them
Yeah. I asked this because when we went on my trip, we ate a couple interesting things too. I tried some octopus, which I've had before, but it was kind of interesting over there, and it was fun. The food over there is great, so
I've heard that.
You stinker. Okay.
Was that one of the key words to get in there? I see how you do that.
That's good. Next question. Favorite flavor of ice cream? Now, I could have worked my word into this.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm telling too much here. Favorite flavor of ice cream?
Ooh, probably peanut butter. Or no, cake batter. Cake batter for sure.
I like chocolate peanut butter.
I'm a cookie dough kind of guy. So
there you go. Okay, last question, Ethan.
If you could turn the oceans into any other substance, what would that be?
Wow. That is the strangest question I've ever been asked. I don't know if I'd want to change it, right?
Yeah,
With all the animals.
There's a lot of negative
survive?
Environmental stuff there, so I don't know.
Yeah, right?
Maybe just for a short time or something. I don't know.
It's not really going to happen.
Yeah, okay. That's fair.
Okay. Peanut butter ice cream.
There you go.
Or cookie dough ice cream.
This has been great. Well, thank you. This has been a real pleasure. Is there anything we haven't covered that you'd like to share with our audience?
Yeah, I think the getting back into construction tech, if you feel like it's too late or you've missed the boat, like you're not alone. That's one thing I speak to a lot of groups about this, and there's a lot of people that get negative, like we haven't started or we're super far behind. Like now's actually the best time to start, right? The solutions are the least expensive they've ever been. Your users are the most technology savvy they've ever been. It's perfect timing. So if you haven't started or you feel like you're super far behind, don't feel that way.
Yeah, that's a good point. No time to start like the present.
Right. Yep.
Well, this has been great. If folks want to get in touch with you, what are some easy ways for them to connect with you and your company?
Yeah, so our company is Spark Business Works. You can find us at sparkbusinessworks.com. You can find me on LinkedIn /Bob Armbrister. That's how you get a hold of us. And we'd love to help anyone interested or anyone. We've got a ton of resources on our website too about construction technology and all the stuff we've talked about today. So feel free to pop on there for some free insight.
Fantastic. Well, and I know I connected with you through LinkedIn, and Yeah, I did that, but I'd also heard of you some other ways too. So thank you again for joining us. This has been really great, very informative, and
Great.
hopefully we're opening up the minds to a lot of folks of the things you could do for them.
Absolutely.
Good stuff.
Thanks for having me, Todd. Thank you, Ethan.
Yeah, thanks.
And I will share with our audience, we both completed our challenge words.
Yeah, snuck it in there.
Mine was pistachio. And
Mine was octopus, which was a pretty easy one with my recent trip to fit in there. So
Well, I could have easily worked pistachio in during the ice cream question, but I thought,
would have been a
that's
softball
too
there,
easy.
but yeah.
Good stuff.
Good job, guys.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much, Bob. And thank you to our audience for tuning into this episode of Construction Disruption with Bob Armbrister of Spark Business Works and sparkbusinessworks.com. Please watch for future episodes of our podcast. We have more great guests on tap. Don't forget to leave a review on Apple Podcasts or YouTube. Until the next time, change the world for someone, make them smile, encourage them. Very powerful things that we can do to change the world in interaction at a time. Until the next episode, God bless. Take care. This is Isaiah Industries signing off. Until the next episode of Construction Disruption.